Welcome to week 2. We made it another week. That's exciting. This was a long week for us. The first thing, I'm super excited. Daniel's decided he's going to start blogging along with the progress. So you don't just get to hear me yammer on and on about pretty graphics and things that impact the design side of things. But you also get the perspective now of Daniel on the programming side, and it'll be kind of a typical banter of, that designer, he made all this work for me, and then for me, Daniel made this decision, and now I got to do 20 things different. So it'll be interesting to see both sides of the coin, I think. I'm excited to read his posts. I know that going in. He's not going to watch my video, and I'm not going to read his posts until we've done our videos so that we're not cross-contaminating and we kind of have a pure approach to the work that we're doing and even our perspectives on it. Because I think that's a real interesting part of it, is that each of us is going to respond differently to the same problems and to the same situations. So it'll be fun to see how that progresses. So check that out. That's over at mealtimesabotage.com. We're also going to post the videos there. So if you want to just go to one place or add it to your RSS reader, do it. Add mealtimesabotage.com. Otherwise, come to YouTube and then, transport yourself elsewhere another way. There were a lot of things that we discussed this week. The first thing that I wanted to talk through is, I mentioned it last week, we're designing for the 4S. Part of the reason, really the only reason we're designing for the 4S is because we're supporting iOS 7, and iOS 7 still runs on the 4S. So we decided the initial design work that we're going to do is going to focus on the smallest screen possible. And I'm really glad we've done that, because from a design perspective, it's forced us to get better. I firmly believe that creativity does not happen unless there are constraints and limitations. If you have a project that has an unlimited budget, you typically are not going to be very prudent when it comes to how you're going to use your budget. You typically say, well, yes, I'll do the emboss and the foil leaf or the gold leaf and the whatever. Like, let's just do everything. And that's usually not the right answer. Very rarely it can be, but usually saying no to things is critical for a good final product. And so what we've found, at least what I found, I think Daniel's seen similar things, but the 4S has really forced conversations for us that we wouldn't have had if we started with maybe, say, the 6 or the 6 Plus. That it just wouldn't happen. And so I'm really glad that we started on that extreme. And then we're also seeing on the other side of it, the 4S solution is not going to work on the iPad. I think that's pretty straightforward. If you've ever used an app and then done the plus, the ×2 or whatever, it's really a silly feature because it just doesn't work. And when you have a lot more real estate, you need to solve the problem differently. I remember when the iPad first came out, I was so frustrated by most of the apps because they were just the same interface blown up larger. That's not how you solve the problem. And so we're going to solve the problem differently on the iPad than we will on the phones. And so it's good that we're starting on an extreme, though, I'll say that, because the foundation we're building here on the 4S is going to be built upon when it comes to the iPad. So when you're approaching an app and you're designing something, that's an important thing to consider, is what is the final output. And I think starting in an extreme is a reasonable place to do that. The other part of it, I mentioned last week, and if you've been part of the Mealtime Sabotage journey at all, you know that we were a successfully funded Kickstarter project. And so one of the things we've talked through a lot is, how do we thank our Kickstarter backers? This is not a Kickstarter project, and we don't really have anticipation that it will be. And so there's not really there's not a need for us to kind of drum that up, but we're really thankful for the people who are willing to back us. We know some of them, but we don't know all of them. And so that to me is it's a real cool thing about Kickstarter. I don't think I can speak highly enough of it. There's just a lot of really great things and a lot of cool relationships and connections, and really a community that developed around Mealtime Sabotage through Kickstarter. So we want to say thank you in some way. Now, what that looks like, we're not exactly sure yet. We're working through it, a few different details, and we'll see how it goes. But that's a fun thing. If you've funded a project or were invested in or whatever, it's a great idea, I think, to affirm those people and the decisions that they've made through some sort of a thank you and an acknowledgement in the product that you're making. It just seems like it makes sense. And so Daniel, Evan, and I are considering that and figuring out the best way to do that. One other little thing before we get to the two big things of the week. The first one is, do we need our own servers? I don't know. I'm going to rely heavily on Daniel on this one, but we've talked through it a little bit. Do we want our own servers, or do we want to rely on a service that'll do this work for us. There's financial implications either way. There is the potential, hey, we're low on whatever, connections or pinging or API calls or something, using those terms, hoping they're at least somewhat related to what it is we need. A service will limit those or whatever we need, and so we'll have to pay more money. The last thing I want, though, is to get some call from somebody saying your app's not working, you need to add more servers, and so then we go to the store, the server store, and buy servers. I'm pretty sure it doesn't work that way, but we have to solve the problem somehow, and it's completely on our shoulders to do that. So that's an interesting thing that we're considering really early in the process from my vantage point, because again, I'm not thinking about under the hood stuff, but Daniel needs to know what to do now in order to not put us in a bad situation later. So for whatever that's worth, we're talking through that already. The two big things I think that happened this week, one is an in-app purchase conversation. I know in-app purchases are typically bad conversations. People don't like in-app purchases, usually when they're done poorly. I was playing a game, and in essence it was you could swing the golf club 3 times, and then you needed to pay money to swing more times. That is an absolutely horrendous application of in-app purchases. I love the World of Warcraft model, where it's simply a subscription. If you want to play our game, sure, give us $15 a month, and then play the game for a month. I like it because it's up front. You get access to the whole game, and there it is. We don't want to do a subscription model. That doesn't seem to really make a lot of sense on an iPhone game. And so we've thought through the idea of just selling it for a certain price and then developing some additional content that you can buy as we go. Or we've considered maybe there's a better way to do in-app purchases. I've been playing a few games that do it, in my opinion, extremely well. In essence, the goal for me is, and really probably all three of us, but I know for me, I've said it multiple times, and so I'm happy to go down with the ship on this one. I want a game that I can beat. I want a game that I can beat without paying money. I look at Clash of Clans as a really interesting example. For those who haven't played, the premise is you build a bunch of buildings and they get bigger and stronger and other people attack you. Really, the key is the number of builders that you have. You can have maximum of 5. You get 3 pretty easily, but then you feel like you need those last 2. You can save gems and you can earn those last 2 builders, or you can just pay money and speed it up. I think that's a pretty reasonable model. I can still be successful without paying money. I can actually unlock everything without paying money. And so that's a little bit more of the philosophy that we're applying. Now, I will say this. So far, the idea of this in-app purchase approach has actually made our game dramatically better. Originally, what we were planning on doing is having some sort of a single-player mode and some sort of a multiplayer mode. And so it was basically you have a mode, and then you can buy more decks if you want. Now what we're going to do is we are going to make multiple decks available from launch. And so Daniel wrote a note, and he said, at last, I'm giving Matt more work. Oh, fantastic. So the current design of Mealtime Sabotage is a diner set. It's basically diner foods. There's, milkshake and patty melt and bacon cheeseburger, those kinds of foods. So what we're going to do is we're going to branch out a little bit in that philosophy. We're going to have a taco shop. We're going to have the American diner. We're going to have Chinese takeout. Then we're debating on whether we stop at 4 and then do some others as we kind of progress after launch, some updates, some fun new features. We're debating between Italian food, maybe French food, that's low on my list, barbecue. So there's a whole kind of list of different types of food that we're considering. So now we're going to push all of those out at launch, and they're not going to be in-app purchases. They're all free. There's going to be some character-driven stuff that we're going to leverage. It's going to impact gameplay in a strategic way, but not in an imbalanced way. But you can unlock everything through our in-app currency without spending any money. That's the goal. Now, I also feel like the currency stuff and the progressive saving and building up to accomplish something through a purchase is actually really rewarding when it comes to gameplay. So I think it's going to be a really, really nice solution. And I just think it's interesting that the topic of in-app purchases can actually be beneficial for gameplay and game development. So I just wanted to throw that out there because everything I read there's 2 camps. There's the monetize the heck out of everything, regardless of its impact, or there's the absolutely do not monetize anything. It's better to have an unsustainable model than it is to do in-app purchases. So I think there's a way to do it right, and that's what we're shooting for. The last thing is the user interface stuff. I had an exhausting week at work, and I worked pretty much every night this week on the game. And Friday night came along, and I was spent. The problem is I didn't know I was spent. Daniel and I were communicating on Slack, which is still working as a great tool, but I was just not picking up what he was putting down. And so he kept kind of making comments to kind of nudge me a certain way, and I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I have no idea what direction you want me to go. He would say a certain thing, like he made a comment on a comp that I submitted or put up on Slack, and he said maybe something like this, and I was like, okay. So I went a whole different direction than what he was thinking, and so just a huge miscommunication. It's kind of comedic. I don't know if it's too soon for it to be funny or not, but we pushed through it. In essence, what it boiled down to for me was my job as the visual side of this game is not always to visually represent my own vision. It sounds weird to say that, but in the context of our team, Daniel and Evan bring so much to the table in different respects that I need to make sure that my perspective is not that I need to only kind of actualize my vision for the game. What I ended up having to do was basically keep guessing until I got it. And it wasn't even an issue that Daniel wasn't communicating clearly. It was an issue that I just wasn't understanding him. So eventually I pushed through, and we got to the point where it was pretty close to what he had in mind. And the funny thing to me is that I love it. I think it's a great solution. I think it's going to be a really fun and helpful and functional user interface in order to get us where we need to go in order for people to pick up the game and enjoy it. And so one of the mantras that I kind of I mentioned one earlier, where creativity doesn't happen outside the confines of limitation, but another perspective I have when it comes to design, and really even beyond design, pursue an idea until you know it's stupid. In essence is what it comes down to. I had no idea. I couldn't even assess if I agreed with Daniel's idea or not, or his vision for the user interface. And so I had to keep pushing so that I could understand what it was, so that I could make a reasonable decision. So per the in-app purchase conversation, the thing I wanted to talk, the thing that we ended up landing on was these different restaurants. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to design visuals for a bunch of different restaurants. What we're going to do now, so this is what will be Mexican food, or the taco shop, or whatever we end up calling it. This is the vibe. There's going to be some more embellishments. I'm still working on the design side of things. This is more UI, so we can begin playing and practicing and honing things in to make sure that they're working the way we want. The big challenge was this right here, the table. What does the table have on it? Does it have anything? Does it have, I actually, at one point I had drawn a plate of nachos and some salsa. Does it have nothing at all? Is it just an empty table? Does it have the logo of that restaurant? We don't know all of those details yet, but what we do know is that this is going to be the general way that we function. When you click on any of the blue portion, it's going to bring up the user's profile information, Game Center stuff, so you can add them. And then if you click on either the calories or the hand, this is their hand down here, it'll show you what cards they have, and it'll replace it on the table, and then you can plug in and play the cards that you want to play on your opponent. And so I'm really happy with the result. I really like where we arrived at the end of the day. But I think it's important that whenever you're in the context of a team, there's going to be disagreement. And when you're in the context of a team that's trying to, how would I say it? Trying to kind of meander through their assumptions. What I think all three of us really, what we find is that we all play games a certain way, and so we assume certain things. And so what I had told Daniel, even specifically regarding this, is I said, when I play a game, I assume the game will tell me most detail about myself. So in our situation, it'll tell me my calories, it'll tell me my hand, and it'll tell me those in the biggest way possible. The reality, though, is that in order to be successful in Mealtime Sabotage, you actually have to be keenly aware of everyone and all of the things that are going on. And so Daniel's solution was to reduce the amount of information that we learn about ourselves in the game and what the game is presenting to you until you desire to access it. And so everyone is on a level playing field in terms of what information is being broadcast or being shown. And so I think it's a really cool idea, and I think it's a really cool solution, and I think it'll be really easy for people to get it. So that's kind of the, I don't know, the ins and outs of where we've been this week. Again, check out the blog, check out mealtimesabotage.com to get a developer's perspective on it. The videos will be posted there as well. And if you have any thoughts on anything, if you're an app developer, if you've been down this road before and you have want to throw your 2 cents into it, drop it in the comments, either here or on the blog. We'd love to read what it is you guys have in mind. And if you're part of the Kickstarter audience that was a supporter of ours, thank you. It's incredible what we've been able to do because of support from backers like you. And we're really excited about the foundation that was laid through our Kickstarter campaign and what it'll become in terms of an app. So looking forward to another productive week, and we'll see you next time.